Which is better, reading a book or listening to an audiobook? Over 40% of Americans think that audiobooks don't count as real reading. And I'll be honest, I would usually agree. When someone tells me they finished 50 books this year, but they just listen to them, it does feel a little bit like cheating. But it turns out I might be wrong, at least partially. Scientists have now mapped exactly what happens inside our heads when we listen to a story versus when we read one on a physical page. And the neuroscience tells a more complicated and even slightly contradictory story. But the science does give an answer, and it might just change the way that you consume your content. So check this out. Researchers at UC Berkeley had 9 people listen to hours of narrative stories inside an fMRI scanner. Every word was mapped to brain activity. Now, this is what your brain looks like when you're listening to a story. Every color represents a different category of meaning. Then the same people came back and they read the exact same stories. Again, in the same scanner with the same words, the content didn't change. And here's the same brain reading. Notice anything? Yeah, they're basically identical. All the red color is the brain processing meaning the exact same way, no matter how the words arrived. The temporal cortex, the parietal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex are all responding pretty much identically. Your brain doesn't really care how the words arrived. It's already extracting meaning the same way. So reading and listening are far more similar than they are different. But both are a lot more complex than we give them credit for. Now, spoken language goes back tens of thousands of years. Written language maybe 6,000. The printing press 600. And audiobooks about 90 years. Your brain didn't build a separate new system for reading. It borrowed one it already had for listening. So, if the brain wiring is the same, does anyone actually learn better one way than the other? Well, let's take a look. Let's get into the evidence, because there is evidence showing that learning via audio is just not so good. Back in 2010, textbook publishers were pitching audio versions of their books to professors. Now, Professor David Daniel wanted evidence that they actually worked before forcing students to pay for them. Seems reasonable. So he ran the experiment. He randomly divided his psychology students into 2 groups. One group read the textbook chapter. The other one listened to the audio version. It was the same content and they had 25 minutes each. After that, they had to take a high-stakes quiz. So what did the data show? Like, how much worse were they performing? Was it just a little bit, or was it like, okay, this is detrimental?
I think the difference between an A and a D, like 28% different. It was not pretty, right?
Both groups had the same content and the same amount of time, but the listeners scored an average of 28% lower on the quiz. Now, the final number is telling, but so is what happened before the quiz.
But before I told them I divided them up, I asked them, which group do you want to be in? Almost all of them wanted to be in the audio version. Most people, if there's an option between something easier and something harder, they're going to take the easier version to get the same result.
So they went in confident, then came the quiz.
Well, the first question on the quiz was, which group would you have rather been in? And the people who were in the audio condition almost universally wished they were in the other condition. They knew they didn't know. Now, they didn't know until they had to be forced with recalling it in front of a quiz. If I asked them while they were learning it, they said, oh, I'm fine, this is great. But then when they started to think, do I know this stuff? Uh-oh, I don't. And they didn't.
They felt like they were learning, but they weren't. That's kind of scary. How often do you finish a podcast feeling smart and realize an hour later you couldn't explain a single thing you just heard? This happens to me pretty often. But why does it happen? Why would students perform worse with audio? There are a couple of reasons. First, reading on paper engages a decoding pathway. Your eyes scan the letters, recognizing and distinguishing shapes. Then in the brain, grapheme to phoneme mapping converts symbols to sounds. And working memory blends these into meaningful units. Second, Audiobooks strip out spatial cues. When you read, your brain builds a map. You remember an idea was at the top of the left page or a definition was halfway through the chapter. Audio doesn't quite have that. Third, your eyes regress constantly while reading. You go back, recheck, reread. Technically, you can rewind audio, but come on, be honest, almost nobody does. And other studies back this up. Compared to reading aloud and reading silently to yourself, listening to audio leads to the highest rate of mind wandering. And the same study found that the audio group had the poorest memory performance and the least interest in the material. And lastly, there are no natural places to stop.
There were no pages that were natural places to pause, to build the knowledge, just kept going and going and going.
So that's the case against audio. Pretty damning. But hold on, because the next study tells a different story. Beth Rogoski is a professor at Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania. She was an English teacher for 14 years and wondered what role different learning mediums had on her students. So she asked, does modality matter? And then she went ahead to test it. She invited 91 college-educated adults and randomly assigned them to 3 groups. Group 1 listened to sections of Unbroken, a book about World War II. Group 2 read the exact same sections but on a Kindle. And Group 3 did both, listening and reading at the same time. After that, everyone took the exact same 48-question quiz. The quiz had basic comprehension questions. For example, what branch of the military did the castaways represent? The participants took the exact same quiz 2 weeks later.
We found no difference in the 3 groups.
Here are the results. The y-axis is the quiz score. The x-axis has the audio, text, and dual modality groups. No significant differences, not immediately and not 2 weeks later, and not between men and women. And Beth was genuinely surprised.
I was surprised because I thought that there would be some effects. I was thinking that with the dual modality, a double dose will do better. And yeah, not at all.
So wait, Professor Daniel and other researchers have found massive gaps, but Beth and colleagues found basically nothing. Why? I'll answer that soon, but there's one thing I have to address. When I first read Beth's study, I noticed something in the acknowledgements that, as a journalist, made me raise an eyebrow. The study was partially funded by Audible, the audio company. So I asked her about it.
They were completely hands-off with us. We set up the study and wrote the results, and they were completely hands-off. We chose the book, the material, and the results are the results, which doesn't really say much for any modality. Maybe Audible would have liked it to have turned out differently, but it is what it is.
Okay, but there is another issue with her study that I think it's worth knowing. The reading group wasn't reading paper books. They were reading books on Kindles. And screen reading tends to score lower than ink on paper. We have a whole video on this, so go check it out. So if this study had pitted traditional print against audio, print might have had a benefit. The researchers acknowledged this themselves. They also cautioned that Unbroken is a narrative nonfiction and may not represent dense technical writing, which brings us back to the contradiction. So we have 2 studies that appear to disagree. David Daniel found a 28% gap. Beth Rogoski found no gap at all. Both are rigorous studies. Both are peer-reviewed. What's going on? Well, the answer is in what the participants were trying to do. David's students were studying textbook material for a college psychology quiz. Beth's participants were reading a narrative for comprehension. Daniel Willingham, a cognitive psychologist at the University of Virginia who studies how the brain learns, outlined this problem for me.
Most people experience narratives as easier to follow in an audiobook format. You get a lot of support from your own knowledge of the conventions of a narrative. When you're reading something like Aristotle, information-dense texts are organized hierarchically. As I'm on page, say, 6, I'm really ideally supposed to be relating that to what I read on page 2. That's very difficult to do. It's easier with print. It's easy to flip back.
That's the key. Narrative content flows forward. Textbook content is layered and hierarchical. You have to hold pieces in your head and connect them. The thing is that audio doesn't really give you that flexibility.
People who love print have a way of reading that is more contemplative. You like to really marinate in the text. You like to set the pace. And there are moments you like to sort of pause and really think about the idea that you've just read. And this is one of the key differences between reading print and listening to an audiobook. With print, you set the pace. With an audiobook, the narrator is setting the pace. And so you don't have those opportunities to sort of like, no, I want to enjoy that sentence that I just read. That was beautiful. Or I want to reflect on that idea because the damn narrator is off, they're still talking.
So the contradiction isn't really a contradiction. Both findings are true. The format should match the purpose. Okay, but what about both at once? What if we combine them, reading and listening at the same time? Well, I used to do this in grad school all the time. Audio at 1.5, eyes on the page. It feels like a superpower, and I thought it was quite helpful. But a meta-analysis of 30 studies with nearly 2,000 participants tested exactly this, and the overall effect was trivially positive. A bump barely clearing statistical noise. So basically, it doesn't seem to work. Beth's dual modality group confirmed it. She expected a double dose to help, but it didn't. More is not always better. So if you enjoy it, keep doing it. It'll help you stay engaged. Just don't expect it to make you a super learner. Now, here's something important I have to flag, because all 3 researchers brought it up independently, and it's a thing that worries them most about how their findings will be used.
If we apply this to children, so I came from the K-12 environment. I taught middle level English for a long time. Students need to be able to read. And when we allow them to just listen to the audio, we are denying them practice in reading. We don't want this to be misinterpreted as, okay, let's just have students listen to audiobooks and not tackle reading. Creating a literate society is important.
None of these studies were about kids learning to read. They were about adults who already can. The finding is about comprehension, not about building the skill of reading itself. Those are 2 completely different things. So is listening to a book really the same as reading one? Here's the honest answer. For general comprehension, reading and listening are functionally equivalent, the same. The brain processes meaning the same way.
If you're doing a book club or just want to relax and you're driving or commuting to work, listening to an audiobook is perfectly fine. You're going to get the same comprehension out of it.
However, for deep learning of complex material, print holds a small but consistent advantage with self-pacing and spatial memory cues. And crucially, the attentional demands of reading reduce mind wandering. So use audiobooks to expand the breadth of what you consume during time that would otherwise be dead. All the researchers I spoke with said the same thing about their own habits. Beth listens in the car and while folding laundry, but reads text when she's preparing for a class.
I don't start with print. I start and end with print. I leave audiobooks solely for stuff that is, pretty light stuff.
And here's the single most important finding. The variable that matters the most is not the format. It's attention. An audiobook listened to with full concentration will beat reading a print book while distracted, and vice versa. And the same applies to other audio mediums like podcasts.
If you're listening to a podcast and you want to remember it, stop it and say, do I remember what I just heard? Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
So the medium is not the message. Your focus is. If you found this interesting, drop a comment. And which do you think is more effective for you? Listening to or reading a book, and why? Share this video with friends and family. They might learn a thing or two. And if you want to see more content like this one, exploring the science of human cognition and learning, make sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching or listening.